Am I live? You can tell that is not me, all right? Not me at all, but I can aspire to be that slim, but not gonna happen. So even before I start doing anything, I'd just like to thank everyone that's a Hype client that's provided information back to Hype over their use of the product, because that's what's helped us be successful, is our ability to gather that information from day one when we started. That's really, I mean, that was, without that information that you've provided back either through these forums or directly to them, there's no way that we would have done what we've been able to do so far. So I want to start out with that because that's really what set the stage for us. We went live on Hype in June of last year with 2 campaigns, and I'll get to those a little later. So we are a newbie to the world, but we're having a lot of fun with it, and I'll go through that. So as I'm going to give you a little background on UC San Diego. As Jasper mentioned, we are, by all sorts of different standards, a top research university in the world, all the different rankings from our research impact, from our citations. We've done amazing things, and the caveat that I'll put to that is that we are one of the youngest universities that's done that, and we've done it in a very fast and short period of time. So we were founded in 1960, and I put these up here as a kind of our numbers, but they really only hint at who we are and what we're doing. You know, you can read them better than I can probably, but first for positive impact. Best values, third best public university from all these different rankings. It's fantastic, it's amazing, but we've done that in such a short period of time, and how we did it was being extremely innovative from the start. We were formed and created differently with a different premise when we started. We started around research as being a huge portion of what we do, and obviously to be a research organization, you have to be very innovative to bring your things through a process and have something that's impactful. One of the notes I'll put on this page is that, wait, I have a laser pointer. We are 33,000 in total enrollment, which is kind of nice since we started out with about 400 people in 1960. We have 3.7 billion in revenue, and we're getting 1.1 billion in research grant awards roughly every year now. So if you think about an R&D perspective, that's about $1 billion a year we're spending in our R&D. Our R&D isn't for a product, but it's for various segments of research. We have part of us the Scripps Research Institute. We have, the Scripps Research Institute, Scripps Institute of Oceanography, which is, you may have heard of, it's 100 and some years old. It's older than the whole university that was founded that is part of. We have across the street from us places like the Salk Research Institute, which is right across the street. We have on our campus, we have a health system, hospitals, 2 hospitals. So we have a whole blend of both a teaching, learning, and actually entrepreneurial area across our campus. So we are someone that's in the industry in many areas and segments. Companies are spun out. We have over 300 current companies in San Diego that were spin outs from UC San Diego. We have incubators on campus. We have student incubators, we have faculty incubators, we have venture capital funds that we do hybrid approaches with on campus. So we have a really wide array of things going on that keep us linked into industry. But at the same time, we went through a process when our new chancellor came on board where we had to really sit back and say, and this goes back to what we heard from Professor Besson earlier today, when he talked about, you can get stuck in your path, and we were extremely successful. But at the same time, we were in budget crises in California and all over the United States. If you look at that from both a funding standpoint, if you saw on the earliest slide, only 8%, we're a state university, but only 8% of our funding comes from the state. So we have to find ways to be very creative and move things forward in a way that to keep our science, our research, our teaching, and all those things at the right level, we had to find new ways and be more creative. And there was a fear or a concern that we could slip backwards. And so in 2014, we issued our strategic plan, but in 2012, we had a new chancellor come to the university. Did I do that? Well, in 2012, I don't know how to relaunch it, but in 2012, we had a new chancellor come to the university. And the first thing he wanted to do was do a strategic plan for the university because we've had these successful, I can look down here, I don't have to look behind me. So we had these really successful things going on our campus in oceanography and in health system and on our main campus, but we'd never had an integrated strategic plan across the entire system. So it was really a different situation for us because he wanted to do it, and no one had ever done it. Each area had done it, but not one area. No one had ever brought it all together like this. And so we wanted to create a compelling story. So you can see this. We wanted to create a unifying vision for the university. More than 10,000 people engaged in that strategic planning process. Our chancellor was very strong on the concept that he wanted to have the voice of the campus, of our community, and of our partners around, regionally, locally, and globally, have an opportunity to provide input on what's the future of a public research university, and how do we redefine that for the rest of this century and going forward. And so he was really strong on having the voice of broad voice coming in, and we did it basically manually. So 10,000 pieces of data coming in from all sorts of manual collection methods. Sometimes a few thousand people probably submitted emails, but the rest were through, we'd have a forum like this, and people would come and provide information. We'd collect it, we'd synthesize it, they'd stay late, they'd write notes. We had certain professors that wrote almost treatises on the topic about what they wanted to see the university become and submit those. There were hundreds of pages. But we took all of that and started mining that for where we wanted to go. So it was a really interesting process. It led to a new mission, vision, value statement for the university, 5 big overarching strategic areas that we are going to, for goals, and then 13 strategies, initial strategies that would support those goals. I'm not going to go through all those, but those are the framing that then at the end of that in 2014, our chancellor was saying, how do we keep these conversations going? How do we make this process continue? And in one of the cabinet meetings, I snuck a little thing in there on his agenda about, what do you think about crowdsourcing ideas to keep the conversation going? And it didn't go over real well with most of the people in the cabinet, because as they thought about what that meant a lot of people being able to go around the hierarchy and get ideas in. They were fine with it through this manual process we had done for the strategic plan, but they were somewhat concerned with this other approach. So it kind of sat on the table and percolated over the summer. And in the fall, I got the email that said, I want to make this happen. And so our sponsorship started at the top with the chancellor, which was a huge benefit for us. He put out the statement, he wanted to do it. You'll see when I go to some of our sample pages that he is the sponsor. He's on every time you log in, he's on the right side of the page. You see him and his statement about, I want you to engage, and it sets the tone in the statement for what he wants to see out of the conversation that's occurring. You can see up here, it's just some of the things that I'll talk about a little bit later. This is where we're headed. It's not where we started, but I'm going to touch on that at the end. We're moving into improve student life and accelerate innovation. We have our transforming patient care is another area we're moving into. Most of the stuff we started with is making local know-how available, giving voice to distributed teams, maximizing value, and doing some other things that are more operationally focused. So that's where we started in those things, but I am going to touch on some of the other ones that are up there. So here's our initial strategy and results about what we did. And what I'm hoping is that I say enough things that people will not tear it apart, but provide feedback and thoughts about how we can be better in the future. So this slide is what we actually launched with the standing committee that we have in place. We launched a standing committee as a governance group. In higher ed, typically administrators make decisions, they're rolled out, and they don't necessarily make our researchers more effective. They might seem to get in the way of our researchers. So we had our standing committee get involved up front, which is made up of 16 faculty members, department chairs, leading researchers. And in the end, what they do is they look at the opportunities that are being put in front of them to be considered for an idea campaign and say, as a researcher, this would be the most beneficial to me in my lab. This would allow me to write more grants, allow me to spend more time doing research, or fund a postdoc or somebody else to help me do research. Or they're supposed to look at it and say, this would allow a student to spend more time with faculty, or allow me more time to be in the classroom. So we put these fundamental framing around that before we let anybody even begin conversations about what types of campaigns we're going to run, what we're looking to achieve. And so that framing was in place with our standing committee, and it allowed us to kind of have really strong conversations once people got some of their initial concerns and anxiety out. It helped frame it. But this was our launching statement. Pretty simple. The only thing that's different on this now than at their launch was the word students. We just launched our first campaign with students in it, which I'll touch on at the end, to invite 30,000 students to offer their opinions on a very hot topic on campus is really scary. So we were really worried about what was going to happen. And I have to say, I'm both excited and impressed by our students and a little disappointed because they haven't been as, I don't know, boisterous as I think the students would have been at like my alma mater. They would have said some really bad things. And they said some strong things, but mostly constructive things, which is pretty impressive. So you've seen this chart a million times. I'm not going to really go through it. I'm not going to talk about this much. This is how we built out our flow. Pretty standard HYPE process. We learned from HYPE. We learned from everyone here that's gone through it. And you'll see, we aligned ours to strategic innovation areas. I already mentioned that this really were driven from the strategic plan. So it was pretty simple for us. Engaged faculty, time-bound focus. We just took the best practices that we had heard from everybody and tried to launch with that. And so, again, thank you. We didn't, I can't say we did it well, but we tried. So what I'm going to start with really talking about is our first launch. We had one strategic innovation area, which is service and people-oriented culture. We had 2 idea campaigns at our launch. We collected 117 ideas. We had 14 concepts that came through that. And we had 15 quick wins, meaning that in some cases within days, while the campaign was still open, people were actually implementing ideas and making them happen. And other ones that took a couple of months. But those quick wins were within 4 months, 15 ideas, thousands of hours saved on campus. A few examples, I think it built out, yeah. Don't require quotes for catering that's under $350. It's a process that took hours of time. Why? Why do it, right? So there's a whole bunch of things that were up here. There's things that are not on that slide that were done. I think I have an example slide of another one that happened within, well, I'll show it to you. I'll get to it. So campaign 1 was hiring and orienting and engaging the campus community. The nice thing about this one, we launched with a project team already in place. So there was a team that was going to launch and go do this project. They heard that we had brought this tool up, and it was online and was ready to go. They said, well, maybe we could reach out to campus through that tool and collect the voice of the campus about what would be most impactful when you're being hired and onboarded, what would make you to be able to add value faster in your job. And so we used, that project team used the tool to go out there and ask the campus those questions. Our other one, we had a lot of different acronyms for this. This is the Campus Challenge to Reduce Administrative Burden, CRAB. We had another acronym that spelled out the word liar. So we strategically went to CRAB. That was the best acronym you could come up with, or whatever you want to say, out of all the options that were put forward. But you can see that was really, it was about service and people-oriented culture, and you can see it was fairly carefully framed, even if it was super broad. We had a narrow one, we had a broad one. We were a little bit afraid about this one because there's a lot of concern about what might happen, and there's a lot of issues about, again, like I started, things that impact the researcher to be able to do their job. Who is the core customer in a university? It's your students, it's your researchers, it's the faculty, it's what they're trying to produce. That's why the university exists. And when you don't put them at the forefront of that, things would slow down or get hindered. So we were really wondering what was going to happen when we left it this broad. But we had a really good amount of input. And I think if anyone cares, these slides will be available later. So this is one of the ones. It's a little bit misleading by the word idea in that upper arrow. It should really angle a little bit down and over because That isn't the exact idea that drove that solution, but it was in that stream, but we couldn't capture it in one screenshot. So I just had to take a screenshot of the thing that was closest to it and say, there's an idea. And this solution, actually, the solution down below, someone saying, in this stream, there's a comment about, wouldn't it be great if there was an app that we could take pictures of our receipts and then just upload those to our expense management? And the person said, well, we already have that. Why don't you know that? So, so they shared it out, but they actually, what they did in that response is they actually put a link to a website where it's at. They uploaded a PowerPoint that you could then open and say, oh, that's how I use that app that lets me take images of any receipt I have when I travel and upload it. Simple. But it was like sharing best practices, another way that we were using it. And we were able to see a number of things like that through the tool where we could share best practices. This one from travel, last 4 digits of your credit card, everyone, it doesn't matter if you're corporate or higher ed, expense management and your traveling and reimbursements and how it has to be done, the last 4 digits of the credit card would have been a huge benefit for a lot of people. This showed up in the system, I think about 8 weekdays in. That came in like the next day, and it was implemented the next week. There was no real cost to do it. They were able to go in, just reset some things, and from what we were told, it's thousands of hours of time saved because people would have to go and match all the time. Is this the right card to this invoice and all, to these receipts? So now it automatically shows up. Simple things, but we're able to do it. This is, which one is this one? Oh, another one is, this is that 350 one that was on the other screen. So just what inspired it, this was the comment, and then that inspired us to go and look at what could be done about it. So real fast on this part of it, successes, some strong sponsorship. We had great sponsorship from our chancellor. Strategic plan created great links and strategies that we could link to, so there was really good alignment. We had fairly clear expectations because we tried to say basically, no matter how much engagement you get, that means we'll look at the idea, not that we'll implement it, because we didn't know what to expect our first round out. So we really kind of set the bar sort of low about what would happen to ideas so people wouldn't be thinking we're going to take thousands of ideas possibly and have to try and implement them. Dialogue and exchanges were really collaborative and constructive. We were really happy with that. We could have used more, but we didn't need more. We had way more than we could handle the first time through. The fact that we partnered with an existing project team made it really nice because that project team was already set up with a communication strategy and ready to run. So as soon as they got the ideas, they could integrate it into the project. They were able to communicate out, this is what we're doing. These are the things ideas that integrate perfectly with our project. These are ones that would be in phase 2 of our hiring and onboarding project. And these are the ones we need to do further research on. So they're able to integrate it and communicate out. They just went live with a portal, I think, in the last week or two. Before it went live, it was already winning awards at some international, whatever, I don't know what the thing was, for what they did. And part of their award was based on the fact that they had crowdsourced part of the input to the solutions to it. So that was kind of nice. The other big win that we had the first time was that the campaign that had no project team associated had leaders in different areas of operational areas that took ownership of what was going on in there. And so when they saw something that came up in their area that they could do something about, they did it. They didn't make it a big deal. They weren't defensive. They reacted in the way that we were hoping, and we coached them. We had some challenges with scoring. We really made ourselves do a lot more work on that than we had originally planned because we wanted to make sure that we do things manually and we tested electronically, and then so we'd have a validation process to say, does this come out the same way when we do it electronically as we did it if we had done this manually? So we put a few more steps in it the first few times we did it, but that was to both validate that we knew how to do it and to validate with our faculty and staff that were part of the scoring that we weren't rigging the system behind the scenes with the scoring and weighting. We still need to clarify better about the processes that are out there with our experts that are in the process and what their roles are and expectations about what we expect. So we created a playbook for them recently. So every time we bring someone in at a different role, they have a whole playbook about what the expectations are to kind of keep that consistent. We had too many evaluators the first time. So then we found out with that many, people felt they didn't necessarily need to score because there were so many other evaluators. So we've gotten better at doing that. What to consider, like thresholds, we've gotten better at that as well. So these challenges are are things that we're trying to address, and we have addressed kind of going into our next wave. And so, and 4 months later, we started going out with some more campaigns, and this is staff performance appraisal process. It was informed both from surveys that we do on an annual basis, as well as from some of the earlier comments and ideas that we got in the Reduce Administrative Burden campaign. So it helped us to frame this and create the language that's in there. And so there was a project team, well, that's a misstatement. There was a campaign team that HR put on it. And I'll talk later about our lessons learned that we thought because of the previous one, it was a campaign team and a project team on the hiring and onboarding, that this team would know that they were supposed to do the same thing as that team. And we didn't realize that until afterwards, that they had done scoring and then left it. So we had to re-engage a little bit on that one. But this, and the other one was optimizing. This is a department that came to us. One of the departments that took ownership of a lot of things from the Reducing Administrative Burden campaign said, wow, we really love that. And they jumped in and said, we want to go out and ask campus these questions on this because we're going to launch a project on this and improve this for campus. We're like, okay, great. So it was really nice that people that were the, I guess, recipient of input the first time thought it was useful enough that they then wanted to build it into their projects as they launched them going forward. Where we're at currently is what we're calling the biggest campaign we've ever done. One of the hottest topics on our campus. We're using it as both an educational program as well as a learning and testing of ideas program for what we're doing. And what you'll see in the upcoming slides, that we have to educate the campus about what's going to happen on campus and around campus for one of the biggest building and infrastructure improvement areas in our campus and around us from the regional area. So right now, we already have problems with parking. In fact, some people spend half an hour trying to find a parking spot. It's that tight. If you get there after 10 a.m., you're going to spend a lot of time. So our professors can be late for class. Our students can be late for class. Our researchers can't get to their lab when they need to be there to check on things. So, I mean, it's getting to a critical point, and it's going to be worse. So we thought, okay, we're going to put out to campus something that helps educate them and do a whole series around it. So that little map, that big map there that has all those dots, all the blue things are projects that we have on our campus. All of the yellow are all the projects going on around us. And I take projects, some of the ones like here, that's the total destruction of the overpass and the rebuilding of the bridge and new overpasses. You can see it's all torn up. This is a whole new bridge. This red line's a light rail coming through campus. This is a whole new bridge going in. There's massive things that are going to totally change. I have already started to change the flow on campus. So with that, we had to educate people what's going to happen. So we decided, and then we, as part of education, you can see that these buildings behind me, we had to also make them excited about what it's going to look like. So in this, we actually created a visual of, this is what it's going to look like. So you have to go through this pain in order to be part of where we're going to be, to help us solve all the interim issues while we get to this place of next level of beauty. So that's kind of what we were trying to do with this one, is educate, show people where we're going to go, show them how much pain we're going to have, and ask for their help. And let's see, I know I'm getting tight on time, and I want to get into the other stuff, but on this one currently, it's been open like 2 weeks. We've only done the initial launch communication. We haven't sent out the next one. There's 323 ideas, 689 comments, over almost 2,000 votes. So it's getting a lot of ideas, and I can say that we haven't had to edit or take out any comments, even though we have faculty in there saying we should eliminate student parking on campus. We have students in there, of course, saying the same thing about faculty parking and other stuff. So very constructively, of course. But no, not to the point. Everyone who signs in, every time they sign in, they have to agree to our principles of community as a university. So we have them, they do that, they sign in every time in our principles of community about treating each other with respect and those types of things. Those are the only terms of service we have about what goes on in here. And it's worked. People are really sticking to it. So these are some of our successes and challenges. I'm going to go through these pretty quick because there's a few more slides I want to touch on where we're headed. But we've had strong interest in the use of the tool by project teams across campus. We actually have a backlog of of things that we could launch. And we haven't, so many people calling us about it. We are our own gridlock now. Leadership across the strategic innovation areas are interested, and I'm going to get into a couple of those. Submitted ideas continue to be implemented, so we're still, that initial pipeline, I didn't update that slide, that was from last fall. There's stuff constantly being implemented. We have a whole another way that we keep information current online, but I didn't take a screenshot of that. I say we're on the cusp of launching some transformative use cases. I'm going to touch on those. And then ideas and comments remain constructive, which is a real positive for us. We would rather have fewer ideas and really have constructive ones than have thousands of ideas that are pointing fingers or not getting us moving forward. Challenges, some users sometimes don't get past the innovation stream. They look at that and they're like, then they put an idea in. They don't necessarily even read the campaign description, so we're trying to get them to read the description because that really helps get better ideas. A percent of the users, like I said, don't read it. This is the other thing I mentioned earlier or alluded to. Having a great campaign team doesn't mean you have a project team. We anticipated that the project team was already part of it. So they launched it, they did the scoring, and we were happily getting ready to launch our next campaign, and we checked back in and said, okay, what do you want us to communicate out about what you're doing? They said, what do you mean we're supposed to do something now? I said, aren't you the project team? They said, oh, no, we're just the campaign team. Someone else is going to be the project team. So we learned from that, that not everyone's going to take that holistic end-to-end goal. You can read the rest of these, but because I want to get to our food for thought. This is where we're headed. Oh, if you see that, that's our campus aerial view on top. And this is Scripps Pier, which is, we're going to have an event, an innovation forum for Hype in November. And it's literally in a building right next to this pier. So this is our food for thought. And that's our little Pac-Man. He's going to get you ready. And this is where we're headed. I know I've only got a couple of minutes. So our research enterprise, we're going to go launching on that. Right now, I think almost as I speak, there's a meeting with our chancellor about some funding that will be put together for the things that go into our research enterprise database that's going to be put into Hype. Our student experience, medical care, and sustainability, all on the kind of big topical areas for us. I'm only going to really focus on our research collaborations, I think that's all there's really time for. This is how we plan on accelerating our research innovation. You can see we move from opportunistic approach to a coordinated, cooperative effort. So what we're trying to do is research in higher ed and other research institutes in a lot of places, you get funding for a grant or some other way you get your funding, and you're going down that trail to kind of make that reality. But we think there's just a better way. So you can, because there's only a couple of minutes, I want to get into some of what we're doing. But coordinate the efforts across researchers, industry, and investors, all in there at one time, inviting them in. Not everyone from an industry, but key knowledge leaders in a particular industry in there at the same time, looking at the same research databases that we have in there that cross all of our research. And having some of the institutes on our area, like the SOC, across the street from us in other areas, having their data in there. We already have partnerships with them. We have sharing agreements. We have commercialization agreements. We have all these things in place, how we share data today. So we think we have the opportunity to create this tremendously large database that'll have all of our innovation in there. And I'm going to touch on it. So what we do is we map things manually. We don't just, I always say, we don't automate a broken process. So we map our process, we test our process. Is this the best process? Then how can technology enable that and make it even better? So we map the process. You can see on top that there's the innovation flow, kind of a high level of the kind of the hype steps, but they're not quite the same words because these were our ideas of how this might flow. Then we did a real detailed process map. This is a shrunk down one. We kept trying to take out enough stuff to fit it on the screen, and we couldn't do it. So then we just made it super tiny so you can't even read it. On the bottom, there's some hype aspects in that gray area. So down there are some things that would relate to hype. You can see hype, you might see hype in there if you could read it. So we mapped it. Then we did a manual test case. We said, okay, without the tool, is there something at UCSD that's viable to take to market or that didn't make it to market for some reason? And there was. This is a breathing apparatus for somebody that has pulmonary disease. He's actually a UCSD engineer who has this problem. So you talked about, there was that talk about, this user innovation. This is truly someone who had the problem trying to find a better way to do it. He had this idea, took it to our tech transfer, and no one kind of bid on it. We knew it needed some more work. So we started talking to some industry people out there and said, what would make this? Is there something here? And they said, well, if this were to go in this direction, maybe with a few tweaks like this, yeah, that could work. And so that was part of our testing of the concept, like, could we do this with a hype process and scale it? Could we have someone come in and do that same type of review where your inventions become your ideas? And so that's kind of what we did. So this worked. We've had actually people fighting over getting it now because we were able to improve it to more than a minimally viable product. Now people are after it, multiple companies. So what we did is, I'm going to build out this whole thing because I'm out of time, but we built it out and we took our partner institutions on innovation deal flow, put them there, made innovations are the ideas. We're going to be rolling into that. And then we have this tech and business. We've got 2 levels of review going on. And then we have the deal economics part of it that does the review analysis for deal economics. And then we have the de-risk things are ready to be licensed or whatever. So that's kind of how it looks there. And then I'm just going to show, we've modeled it to hype. We actually then took that and modeled it in much more detail to the hype roadmap. And so like I said, if you want to see what we're doing, if you look at this left side, that's all of our inventions. Everything we've ever made, whether it's been to market or not, is going to be in there. Then you can take it through, we're going to start out with some categorization. And tell me when I need to I don't want to get hurt, but tell me when I need to stop, really. I say, well. So you can see how we did the drug discovery. We're creating categories to link things into, but we're not going to force them into there because so many things cross over so many borders, right? We don't want to categorize because we know that will actually hinder us. But we're going to make sure that there are tags and other things that will help people find them, as well as the tool helping people find them. So it'll help matchmake as it goes through the tool. And then we have, eventually you'll end up with this portfolio over here. And then you can kind of see concept teams that'll move it around, some partners coming in to say, what does this really need? Is it prototyping? Is it this, or is it that, or this type of test? And then it'll move through the whole process and eventually get to commercialization. And so we've mapped the whole thing, and then this is where we're starting. So we actually have areas. You can see we have literally things identified where we have things that are ready to be taken into with the reviewers from industry to give us feedback. And we have the investors already identified. I took them out because obviously we don't want to publicize all of that yet. But so we're ready to go. So I raced through those last slides. But I wanted to say that we took the diligence up front, and then we modeled it to hype to say, could we do it with hype? And now we had to tell hype that we're doing it. But still, I thought it would be probably a good place to tell them, right? So I was over time, so I'm stopping there. So that's it. I'll stop.
Impressive from the work that you've done. So you've heard some of the speakers before, more from the private industries, from an industry focus. You have more governmental or like educational focus. Do you see a lot of similarities or differences between those 2 areas in terms of collective genius, crowdsourcing?
I think there's tremendous commonality in there, and that's why I think industry could use the same type of model that we're using on the research innovation side. Our health system model that we're going to roll out for customer care, I think could be used by industry. I think there's a perception that higher ed's in these old silos and they do things in a certain way, but I think there's a whole generation of people in higher ed that are really looking at things no different than industry. I came from industry to higher ed. Yeah. There's a whole group there that's looking at bringing those best practices, not to change how research is done, but to create enablers to how that research is done, in this case, right? To move it, to help them move it, because the research done in higher ed isn't there to necessarily be commercial. It's to do the research for the sake of trying to solve X or Y. And so we need the partners to come in at certain points to say, if you had just done a toxicity test on that, we could have taken that to market, but without that, we can't do anything. So, there's things like that. So we see it as an ever-increasing integration of industry and education, and for both our students and our researchers, everybody.
Yeah, and in terms of delivery, because that was one of the issues that we've heard before, delivery/implementation. And so several of them, of course, started using the methods from California, Blank, Reese. Of course, you're in the epicenter of like startup innovation. It's like everything what you do in San Diego is like, whoop.
Well, we've had venture capitalists that heard about what we're looking to do with this platform fly down, and investment banks come down. Because some of the stuff we're talking about is really early stage scientific, it's maybe cancer markers that you then have to take a whole through process. But there are some people really interested in investing in it. So we have Silicon Valley people flying down to see what we're doing. They're coming on campus, they're going, and now having a tool like this, they can actually see it remotely. They can engage from wherever they're at. They can actually get the benefit almost of being there to see what the things are that might be useful for what they're doing. They can matchmake between one technology and the platform with something they saw somewhere else. And we have one person at one of the big investment places that said his blockbuster drug would have come to market 2 years earlier if he had had this. It took him 2 years after he discovered a solution or cure for something in the lab to find a delivery mechanism. After 2 years, he was in an event, something like this, he said. He met a guy, and that guy had a delivery mechanism that was perfect for his drug. It took a while still to get it approved and all that type of stuff after they had the delivery mechanism. That guy was in his own company. He'd had the delivery mechanism for 5 years, but they'd never met. They'd have no way to see each other's work. So this is, I think, it's all directly transferable in those type of things. So,
cool. Sounds promising. Any questions from the audience before we close off for the day? Or at least for the official intellectual part.
Nice.
Okay, can I have a big hand for Bob?